Okay, we're the Masters. I'm Grumpy Dungeon Master Jay, joined by many co-hosts as usual, Christopher, Kristian, and Dan. Welcome back, Dan. You were missing last week, right?
Yeah, I did. I did miss last week.
And welcome back, Kristian.
Weather. Yep.
You were gone the past few days, even though we didn't record without you.
I was gone the past few days.
Welcome back, Christopher. You haven't gone anywhere.
No, I haven't. But I got some bad news.
Oh no.
I lost the podcast. The ownership of it has left me and mine, and I gave it to somebody else, and they'll be taking over from here on out.
Well.
Okay, is it Claude?
No, it's not Claude. It's my wife.
Oh. Okay.
So do you all remember a little while ago?
You lost a bet. You lost a bet, didn't you?
Yeah, I lost a bet. Okay. So a little while ago, the post stamps, the post office came out with those D&D stamps.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure out what one of the stamps was. Okay?
Yes.
There was one stamp that we could not figure out the picture of, where it was from, or what book it was mentioned from.
Yeah, some dude writing a nightmare.
Yeah, it looked like a dude in plate mail writing a nightmare. Well, turns out that we all suck at Googling.
I never Googled it.
Okay, well, that was half the problem then. So, my wife found it. And I said, I bet you can't find it. Ha ha ha. If you do, I'll give you the Grumpy Dungeon Masters. And she found it in like 15 minutes. I don't know how. I don't know why. I don't know. I was very arrogant. Maybe I was a little drunk. I'm not sure. But I'm posting the link in our podcast chat on our Discord, which will now be the Shelly Discord. And the stamp in question is a Death Knight riding nightmare leading an army of undead. And this happened to be from one of the books I don't think any of us have ever taken a look at or had any interest in. It was released in 2020, and it was the Beast and Behemoth book for the Young Adventurer's Guide series. Basically, they made a bunch of D&D style D&D books for younger kids, so they could basically get into D&D without having to read the player's hand guide. So they had like the player's handbook and the monster manual and the DM's guide, but for, dumbed down for kids. And in the Beast and Behemoth book is where that art was actually featured, and that's where they got it from.
I'm fairly sure I've never even heard of that. For new players, they have this wonderful thing called a starter set.
Well, it's listed as a starter set. I think it's more like simplified rules, simplified rules, and just a different way of presenting the material to everybody. I think. I don't know. Yeah. I've never opened the book and looked at it, but that's where it's from. It's going to be the Grumpy Shelly podcast next week. We won't be here. I'll be crying miserably. Maybe I can beg my wife to give it back to me, but all the pictures have been found. That's what we know.
Well, time to rebrand. This is no longer the Grumpy Dungeon Master podcast. This is now the Happy Game Masters.
Yeah. I can do the podcast with Shelly. That's fine.
Shelly said she's going to turn it into a wrestling podcast.
Okay. I mean, that changes nothing for me.
And in follow-up terrible news, Disney is closing the best attraction they've ever had. The Muppets attraction that they have in the Disney park.
I heard.
They're getting rid of it and replacing it
go ahead.
with Monsters, Inc. Attraction. But they're also building a Muppets roller coaster or something in another park. I don't know.
The Aerosmith one, the Aerosmith roller coaster is becoming a Muppets roller coaster, which is fantastic because it's Muppets.
Yeah, Muppets are good. I'm sad to see them go. I like Monsters, Inc., but I don't want it to take the place of Muppets.
Yeah, we went to Disney this year and we actually saw that Muppet Vision 3D show. And honestly, it was the best thing that happened at all the parks. Like, it was fantastic. Muppets were running around, stuff was happening. It was a cool 3D film. It was kind of 4D film, like it was just so great. I'm sad to
I
see
remember
it go.
going to like a Muppets live show there, seeing my two favorite Muppets, Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, they were there too. Yep.
Yeah.
We were literally talking about this yesterday. Me and my friend Mike, he's the one who told me about it, and we got to talking about what are they going to do with the roller coaster. And it's sort of the idea that we had, at least, whether or not this becomes a thing, is that you have to go on an adventure with Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. So you have to get in the van with them and ride along.
That's what it looks like. So yeah, just two bad pieces of news to start this off in great form.
Well, so I know that we would love to immediately just pick up where we left off from last week and continue talking about the Dungeon Master's Guide. But as this is Thanksgiving week, I think it's more important that we talk about the 5-headed turkey, Turkamat, and all of the other crazy 5-headed turkey shit that I've seen today.
Turkey Hydra.
I literally minutes before I got on to record this podcast, I'm scrolling through Facebook, and one of the DMs group, there's a picture of a 5-headed turkey miniature. Like, damn, these things are everywhere.
It's actually from, I think, 2022. Prolific 3D designer makes basically makes a miniature for literally everything that D&D's ever made, as well as for other systems, and also just takes requests on his Patreon. Yeah, I think 2 years ago somebody requested the Turkey Hydra.
Yeah.
Language is, of course, Gorbel.
Of course.
And it is a dangerous beast.
Well, you found the stat block for it, so why don't you read the Turkey Hydra stat block out, just to give everyone a taste of it?
Yeah, so it's a little taste of turkey.
I see what you did there.
For Thanksgiving. Turkey Hydra, huge monstrosity, unaligned, 15 natural armor, 172 hit points, speed of 30, fly of 10, because they fly in little hops, strength of 20, dex of 12, con of 20, intelligence 10, wisdom 10, charisma 7. Plus 8 strength saving throw, plus 8 con saving throw, plus 3 perception, language, gobble. Challenge rating, 8. Multiple heads. The Turkey Hydra has 5 heads. While it has more than one head, the Turkey Hydra has advantage on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and unconscious. Whenever the Turkey Hydra takes 25 or more damage in a single turn, one of its head dies. If all its heads dies, the Hydra dies. At the end of its turn, it grows 2 heads for each of its heads that died since its last turn, unless it has taken fire damage since its last turn. Gravy. Stepping up here. The Turkey Hydra regains 10 hit points for each head regrown in this way. Reactive heads has an extra reaction for each head that it has. Wakeful. While the Turkey Hydra sleeps, at least one of his heads is awake. Multi-attack makes it its main bite attacks as it has heads, and its bite is plus 8 to hit, reach 10, one target, D10 plus 5 piercing.
See, what you need is some crazy ass wizard to get one of these, keep it locked up somewhere, make sure it doesn't ever die, and then when Thanksgiving rolls around every year, you just chop off all the extra heads and then hand them out.
Yeah,
everybody has turkey.
Food. It is definitely a clever way to
like it's an infinite food supply. Yeah.
Celebrate by slaughtering heads of the Turkey Hydra. Some people may die doing so. It is a dangerous beast, but
yeah,
I feel like many will live.
Yeah, you can't really chain up every head as they sprout, but you just keep the one locked up, and
yeah. So that's the Turkey Hydra. There's a great miniature of it by Miguel Zavala. You can follow him on his Patreon. He's also on Reddit, and definitely worth printing if you have a 3D printer. And I'll say, and I don't know if we want to do this now or later, but I did a deep dive in the Catoblepas after our podcast 2 weeks ago, and I've got some hot deets.
Hang on, I can't wait to hear this, and we'll pick it up immediately after we're done with this turkey conversation.
Okay. Yeah,
but me and Chris, we were having the idea on if you had Turkamat, aka Tiamat, except as a bird, what are the 5 different heads? And, go ahead, Chris.
I talked about this with my wife because she's taking over the podcast. And I was like, okay, so if Tiamat was a turkey, what would her heads be? And then she like stopped what she was doing. She was making hot cocoa. She stopped what she was doing. She turned around and she looked at me and she goes, Tiamat is a turkey. All dinosaurs become turkeys, and dragons are dinosaurs. So she's already a turkey. I was like, okay, all right.
Considered that, but that's accurate. So.
Pushing that aside, it's like, what heads would you have? And I think there's two ways of thinking about this. She thought the same way you did, where what kind of fowl would you want to eat? Or what are the fowl that we do eat? And those would be the heads, okay?
Yeah, if one of them's a turkey, I think all the others should be some sort of a bird that could end up on a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving plate.
So I think you had listed the same list that she did, which is goose, chicken, turkey, quail, and guinea. She didn't say quail; she said peacock, because that was just the same.
It's just a duck.
Yeah, but duck would have been good as well.
So
nobody eats a peacock though. Who the fuck eats peacock?
So I think that's the right answer. I think it's goose, chicken, turkey. Okay, turkey being the main head, and then quail and duck.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
Yeah, I think that's the other one. I personally think it's like, okay, well, yes, Tiamat, she's the mother of all dragons.
Some of the other stuff would be those offshoot stuff, like your yellow and brown dragons. They don't get a head. They're not the main dragons. They're the off-brand dragons.
I kind of feel though that it should just be all the big birds. Like the best birds are the ones that make up Tiamat, not the ones that you would eat, because we here in America, we love the eagle for some reason, but Benjamin Franklin fought for the turkey to be the nation's bird. He
did, that dumb bastard.
So assuming that we're going for great birds, and for some reason the turkey is considered a great bird, what other great birds would make up this great bird Tiamat, and not the I'm going to devour this bird Tiamat? So like
Kentucky.
What?
So New Zealand hosts a Bird of the Century contest.
Oh wow! Okay. How many times did they do this? Like once every 100 years?
No, they actually do. I think they do it each year or whatever. But at some point, I guess John Oliver and Last Week Tonight found out about it, and so they decided that the rules of the contest is basically anybody can sponsor a bird and then run advertising campaigns to try to get people to vote for their bird to win the Bird of the Year in New Zealand. So of course he spent HBO's money to campaign for this weird bird that he found.
What's the bird?
A native New Zealand bird called the Putekiteki, and then they won Bird of the Century because he spent an HBO cash for advertising. He put billboards all over the place in New Zealand and in random places in America for no reason.
I'm down with one of the 5 heads being a Putekiteki just for the name alone.
So this kind of led me down to a weird rabbit hole. So we'll have
it has a weird mating ritual where they basically slam dance.
Okay, I love it. So the Putekiteki would be one of the heads. I definitely think that so the turkey's the center, obviously. I definitely think that maybe the ostrich should be up there as for being one of the bigger birds.
Yeah,
sure.
And
parrot.
Okay, parrot. So we need one more. What's a great bird?
A penguin.
No, it can't be the penguin, and I'll get to that in a second.
No, but I want to see a like a.
No, it can't be. It can't be the penguin.
I just want to see the one short stumpy little head. Yeah, I want to see the one short stumpy head.
I thought it would be the penguin.
An owl.
An owl.
Owl's a solid choice. Yeah, that's a good choice.
Okay, so it can't be the penguin because I found out some really weird information when I was going in for the great birds. Penguins aren't penguins. Okay, so the animal that we associate with being a penguin and the species of penguins aren't what that is. The actual penguin was originally called the great auk, A-U-K. That was the first penguin. Okay, and we thought
Killed
that bird was fucking amazing. And so we started naming other birds that looked like this bird, also called them penguins. Okay. Then we hunted that bird to extinction. Okay.
As we do.
So essentially, we only call penguins penguins because we found a better penguin in the Penguin Fight Club, essentially. And if we find another better bird that we want to call a penguin, we'll just basically kill all the penguins in the world. And call that new one the penguin. So we can't have this Fight Club style bird be on the Tiamat. That just can't be. I won't allow it.
All right. Well, so we have the Puteki, the turkey, the ostrich, the parrot, and the owl. That is going to be one very, very weird looking creature, and I hope somebody makes a miniature of this.
I think it's adequate, because then you have the two types of Tiamat: all the birds you eat and all the best birds in the world.
Yeah.
And I think owls kind of cover it. You can argue what owl, but
you get the best. You get the best Turkamat, and then you get Wish Turkamat.
I love it.
I kind of like thinking about Turkamat's stats.
Oh Lord, let's not even go down that rabbit hole.
Well,
I don't know. I'm
hole.
pretty sure that Wafels could just throw this into AI. We can just get some generator right now.
Oh yeah, put Claude to work real quick.
Do a CR. We're gonna do a CR30 Turkamat.
You got a goose head, so there's obviously honk.
Yeah, honk is definitely involved. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not gonna be able to fly for shit though.
I don't think it needs to.
That's where the turkey that's where the turkey comes in. The turkey and the chicken, they're not great at flying.
No, ducks can fly though.
Ducks and geese can damn sure fly, but I think you get like a 50. Yeah, you sort of get a 50-50 bird there.
Yeah. I hope I break the chat GPT. Yeah. I mean, it's taking all of our jobs eventually. It really is.
I doubt that.
Not gonna take my job.
Well, you don't have a job.
No, I have a job. Anyway.
So, how long until AI just sneaks in there and just starts being all things? All right. So okay,
sure.
So
it'll be crappy at all things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right, so I need you to put this into ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, it's running right now.
Start it with the stats of the base stats of aspect of Tiamat and just alter it basically.
Oh yeah, it's doing it right now. It's called Turkamat, the Feathered Tyrant. Armor class 25, hit points 615, speed of 60, fly of 120. We can fix that.
Yeah, that's a speed of 60 and a fly of 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Strength 30, Dex 10, Con 30, Int 18, Wisdom 18, Charisma 24. Saving throws are Dex, Con, Wiz, and Charisma.
Yeah, just get to the important stuff, the traits and the actions and legendary actions.
Legendary resistance 5 a day. Multi-bird genius. Turkamat's intelligence and cunning are derived from its diverse avian heads. It has advantage on intelligence checks related to nature, strategy, and deception. Aura of Discord. Each creature of Turkamat's choice within 120 feet that can hear it must make a DC 22 Wisdom saving throw at the start of its turns or be unable to take reactions and must subtract 1d4 from attack rolls or saving throws until the start of their next turn.
I like that one.
Multi-attack. Turkamat can use its frightful presence and then make 5 attacks, 1 for each of its heads. Then it says Beak Attack 5, the Puteki, or what was it? How do you say it?
Puteki.
Yeah.
Puteki. And then it says Kiwi Head. That's weird. Plus 17 to hit. 40-10 plus 10 piercing damage. Target must take a strength saving throw or be knocked prone by the head's burrowing strikes. Ostrich Head, plus 17 to hit, reach 20. 66 plus 10. Target creature must make a DC 22 con save or be stunned. Turkey Head, plus 17 to hit, 20 feet. 4d8 plus 10. Target takes a DC target must make a DC 22 Wisdom saving throw, or are afflicted with irrational rage, forcing them to attack the nearest creature on their turn.
That should have been the goose.
There's no goose. It's Pukateki, ostrich, turkey, parrot, owl.
Oh, you're doing the wish version. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that.
The parrot head is plus 17, 4d6 plus 10, a DC 22 charisma saving throw, or be unable to cast spells until the end of its next turn. And the owl is plus 17 to hit, 48 plus 10 necrotic, DC 22 intelligence saving throw, or be blinded until the end of its next turn. Frightful Presence is Frightful Presence. Turkamat's Roar. Each head emits a devastating screech in unison. All creatures within 90 feet must make a DC 22 con save, taking 11d10 thunder damage on a failed save for half as much on success. And for its legendary actions, it has Wing Attack, Avian Barrage, which is just random beak attacks, and Eerie Silence. Turkamat silences all sound within 30-foot radius until the end of its next turn. Creatures in the area are deafened and can't cast spells that require verbal components. And then it has some lair actions. The description is, Turkamat is a bizarre yet majestic entity, with each head embodying the personality and traits of its avian origin. The creature is as capricious as it is powerful, shifting from playful to terrifying with the flap of its mighty wings. I think he just took the Tiamat stat block and just
a lot
changed
of it.
things around.
I think the owl should have been a wisdom save. Because that just makes more sense. The silence thing, I like the deafen aspect of it because birds are fucking noisy, especially parrots. But
I would have done some. I would have done some different stuff, like the parrot thing. I would have had some kind of mimicry or mockery in it.
Yeah.
But I like that it's the charisma saving throw. Intelligence for the owl makes sense. I like the irrational rage from the turkey. That's probably the most creative thing that it put in there. But yeah. ChatGPT statting your Turkamat since 2024.
Yep. I mean, I know everybody here at some point has or will run a Christmas one shot.
I've never done that.
Yeah, you guys ever run a Thanksgiving one shot? Because I feel like this should happen.
I have not, but I feel like it should happen as well.
I feel like maybe for my Christmas one shot, I'm thinking of an idea of where I use Turkamat fighting Santa Claus and Krampus because they're overstepping their bounds on the holidays.
So I actually, when I wrote Everyone's Been Naughty, I originally thought of it in two parts. The first one was the one that I released on DM's Guild, and the second one was going to be basically the players going back in time and participating in the Snowman Wars that I hinted at in the first module.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had thought about and just kind of penciled in some thoughts about having the third one basically be the fight against a turkey-related villain that's trying to take over Christmas and take back Christmas because Christmas has taken over Thanksgiving. Kind of like, Nightmare Before Christmas, but with turkeys.
Yep. So sort of the same idea just popped in my head. So yeah, you could use Turkamat. Turkamat would be perfect for it.
That's the problem I ran into though, is like I was like, oh cool, the turkey hydra is so cool, but I think there's probably just too many out there. And I feel like it'd be treading on ground that's already been tread before, and I don't want to do that. So I don't know. Yeah, you can, sure. I don't know how I feel about doing it,
I mean, you would be writing it up to put it out in DM's Guild and shit. So that's a whole other thing. Me, I'd just be running it for my players. So.
Fair enough. But
right.
I don't think there's enough. I would like to see more Thanksgiving related stuff. Isn't there a horror movie with a Thanksgiving turkey?
Oh, there's tons. Thanksgiving. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's the best known one. I've seen a couple different ones about the turkeys though.
Yeah, I kind of feel like in this holiday season, like Thanksgiving definitely is just being completely forgotten and lost in the capitalism of America. Like it's Halloween And before Halloween even got here, everything was already Christmas themed in all of our shops and stores. There was no Thanksgiving stuff.
Yo.
We went out to buy Thanksgiving decorations like a weekend or two ago.
Yeah, they don't have those in the store, man. I
They don't
also
have
went
them in
to
the fucking
buy
store.
Thanksgiving decorations the day after Halloween, and all it was Christmas.
Yeah. So like I kind of feel like that's probably the best route to go, is that Thanksgiving has to take back its place in Christmas, push it back a little bit. I was in Synergy Gamers in their Somerville location out here in Charleston, and I was running another 50th anniversary module, and we were listening to whatever they had playing in the store music wise, and the Mariah Carey song came on. And Steven, one of the owners of the store, screamed from across the store, "Alexa, skip!" And basically had to skip the Mariah Carey song because he refuses to listen to that song until after Thanksgiving. And I kind of agree with him. So she's not thought out yet. I think that may be the better Thanksgiving like villain than the Turkey Hydra would be the Mariah Carey like siren version.
Well, maybe you hinted that it's like the Turkey Hydra or Turkamat, but really it's Christmas coming too soon. That is in fact the enemy we're fighting.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the right way to spin it. And I do need to sit down and do my anniversary Tarrasque or my birthday Tarrasque story at some point in time and actually write that up, since I have everything statted out for that, and have an anniversary module so people can run that on their birthdays or anniversaries or other personal holidays, for people. And, and then we need like a 4th of July module. We need to have like,
Oh, you could do I mean, there's a holiday every damn month. I'm sure you could come up with a module for all of them.
I'm sure there's Valentine's Day modules out there. I don't want to play them. I'm married.
Yeah, we better say that before she takes over the podcast.
Yeah. Grumpy Chili Podcast, all about wrestling.
mm-hmm.
All right,
talk about how what was it I saw? It was the Onion article that that Donald Trump let slip that his entire political career was actually just an elaborate WWE storyline where he's going to challenge Cody Rhodes for the Universal Championship to see who the most powerful man in the world really is.
My God, the Onion came up with a good one finally. It's been a while.
And like, we're trying to do satire here, folks. It's just almost impossible.
Yep. When satire becomes real life, it gets difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so let's talk about. You wanted to talk about some more things you found out about the Catoblepas.
Oh man!
So remind everybody what the Catoblepas is, because it got weird.
I only remember a certain LARP where there was a certain Catoblepas.
Yeah.
All right, so Catoblepas, as far as D&D is concerned, it is some sort of miserable mix of a buffalo, dinosaur, warthog, and a hippo, that all in one, that lived in the swamps or the wastelands. And in D&D, depending on what edition you end up fighting it in, is a it's kind of like a gorgon. It possessed a scent that reeked of death and famine, not dissimilar to the swamp gas that filled their favorite environment. The scent was reminiscent of a skunk stench mixed with foul bog vapors, which can kill you. And I want to say in 5e, what were the stats on this thing? The Catoblepas.
It had the death.
Yeah,
stare, but that was it.
Yeah, it's a surprising sort of critter that it's kind of a mixture of things that. Whenever I first read about it in 2nd edition, I think I was like, "Oh, this is just another one of those Gygax things where you got some Dollar General, figures, melted them all together, and just came up with some bullshit that's just mixing a number of different creatures." Because it has a death ray. It literally has a death ray.
Yep.
It's a CR5 monster with a death ray that literally make a con save, take X amount of necrotic damage. If you fail by fire from war, you just take full 64 necrotic, which if you're reduced to 0, you just die. In addition, their stench just poisons you if you are anywhere nearby it. But in earlier editions, like the death ray was just like save or die or you're dead, and it was just you'd get murdered by this thing. And it's if your DM were to describe this thing to you in first or second edition, you had no idea what you were going up against. You just feel like, okay, we just either walk around it or we just fight it because it's, I don't know, some big cow thing, and this thing would just kill you. So this thing was not just created by Gygax. This is actually Greek and Roman mythology.
We actually talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You actually brought that up. Like it's Nigerian folklore.
It goes a little bit. I'll get into it. Hold on.
It goes deeper.
It's essentially it's African, and specifically Pliny says that Pliny the Elder says that it's from Libya, but Libya for them is just an entire
Right. Yeah.
So Pliny the Elder specifically had a whole big entry on this, and Pliny the Elder, you may recognize him because he essentially wrote the first encyclopedia. He also coined a phrase which I'm sure you guys are familiar with: "Fortune favors the bold," as he went off to die at the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. He decided to sail into the massive toxic pyroclastic cloud emanating across the Bay of Naples towards Herculaneum. He, of course, then breathed in that toxic cloud and fucking died.
Like a boss.
Like a boss, because they definitely remember him because of that. So Pliny the Elder, no chump, like, prolific writer. Lots of his writings actually survive still, and on book 7 of his encyclopedia, it is the nature of animals. So the entry is: Libya is the parent of a great number of and variety of wild animals, and moreover, it seems that the same country produces the animal called the Catoblepas, also known as down-looking, or Catoblepas. In appearance, it is about the size of a bull, but it has a more grim expression, for its eyebrows are high and shaggy, and the eyes beneath are not large like those of the oxen, but narrower and bloodshot. And they do not look straight ahead, but down on the ground. That is why they are called down-looking. And a mane that begins on the crown of his head that resembles horsehair falls over his forehead, covering its face, which makes it more terrifying when one meets it. And it feeds upon poisonous roots. When it glares like a bull, it immediately shudders and raises its mane. And when this has risen erect and the lips about its mouth are bared, it emits from its throat pungent and foul-smelling breath, so that the whole air overhead is infected. And any animals that approach and inhale it are grievously afflicted, lose their voice, and are seized with fatal convulsions. The beast is conscious of its power, and other animals know it too and flee from it as far as they can. So fucking metal, first off.
Yeah.
He's writing in the 1st century AD about this thing. So Pliny was not the only one to write about it. About a century later, a Greek and Roman a Greek author, Roman-born, wrote about it in his continuation kind of on Pliny's writings, called On the Nature of Animals, alternatively, The Characteristics of Animals. And he goes through like a number of different animals, including things like beavers and sharks and shit like that. So he just kind of goes through all this stuff, and he says, see here, in western Ethiopia, there's a spring, the Nigris, which most people have supposed to be the source of the Nile. In its neighborhood, there is an animal called the Catoblepas. In other respects, of moderate size and inactive with the rest of its limbs, only of the very heavy head which carries with difficulty. It is always hanging down to the ground, otherwise it is deadly to the human race, as all who see its eyes expire immediately. Again, fucking metal. And I just got to say, props to Gygax for fucking reading this shit. Like, because he had to look this shit up in a library in Milwaukee or like Geneva.
There's no internet there.
Because, obviously no internet in that time period. He can't just fucking search this shit. So he had to have been looking through Pliny's or...
it's in Naturalist Historia.
Yeah.
I've read it.
The entire thing?
No. I've read a lot of it. It's
an encyclopedia.
Yeah. It is interesting though.
So
yeah, it's fucking interesting as hell.
I mean, everybody had an Encyclopedia Britannica back then. Everyone.
Sure.
So
I do wonder whether it actually appears in the Encyclopedia Britannica. But I'll say the other places that it does occur, and I'd love to actually see his notebook on this, because Da Vinci writes about it in his notebooks. So I'm guessing there's a sketch of it somewhere in a Da Vinci notebook, which I am dying to see, which would be freaking amazing. And that was in the 15th century. So I mean, yeah, it's really just kind of interesting that this creature found its way to Dungeons and Dragons as a monster you can just happen to stumble upon. Because this isn't a monster. This isn't a boss monster. This is something that like an evil like swamp wizard has hanging out near his tower to to keep any prying eyes away or something.
It makes sense because a lot of old D&D stuff pulls from old like mythology and sources, so they're pulling from Greek and Roman mythology. So it kind of makes sense that they pull from the writers in that era that were writing about the mythological creatures in their time. So yeah, that's kind of it is interesting that he pulled it from that, but they've clearly looked through things like this.
So that's kind of what I wanted to ask. So it's definitely a mythological creature, but all mythological creatures are based in some kind of actual thing, like the Cyclops is elephant skull kind of thing. So what is the real life assumption of what the Catoblepas is or was?
The real life assumption is that is the wildebeest.
Yeah, wildebeest or water buffalo from when they would first go in and see those what to them would look like really ugly cows.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but
also
where does the instant death thing come from?
Honestly, it's probably the scent that's probably overwhelming anybody who happens to be nearby it, and the fact that this can just run you over because it's a giant animal that will just trample you to death.
Run you over. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, the wildebeest definitely has like this weird, almost like horsehair just hanging over its face. It looks it's a weird looking critter. But yeah, other ancient and medieval descriptions of it, go through Pomponius Mela and Chorographia in AD 43, which is actually before Pliny. But it echoes the same description that Pliny gives. Timotheus of Gaza, which by the way is like the next name I got to use for an NPC. Timotheus sounds just like a scribe, which he wrote on animals in about the 11th century. And Constantine Manasses, who mentioned fire-breathing Catoblepas, and he was a Byzantine writer in the 12th century. So like this, like I mean, part of this, it could just be scribes and in various churches finding copies of Pliny's works and just being like, sure, yeah, I'm going to include that in mine. That seems fine. I'm not going to verify this at all, of course. But
yeah, he definitely like it talks about he definitely studied older works from like Greek authors, including Herodotus, well known for his factual representations of the world. It would just take things like, well, he wrote about this, so it's got to be true.
Yeah.
This reminds me of like another like mythological thing that has some basis in reality, but no one's sure. If you look at a lot of the old medieval paintings, like you can kind of see knights fighting like large lizards, dragons, whatnot. And there's a lot of theories around those where they're just a giant lizard of some kind that existed. It was hunted to extinction. That wasn't really recorded. But the interesting one is, for some reason, there's a lot of pictures of knights and heroic armies fighting giant snails. And no one knows why. And I think that's kind of where we kind of got the flail snail from, just kind of a bigger version of that. But like, there's a lot of medieval knights fighting snails and dragons. Like they're like almost the dragons are cooler looking, so they're more well known. But there's just as many fighting giant snails, like snails the size of houses. So like,
I might do some looking into that. Dragons were also often used in Christian theology and imagery as representations of Satan. So knights fighting him is a metaphor for going off and fighting against the enemy of God.
But I don't know where the snails come from.
I don't either, and now I want to know more.
Good news! I found you an article on the BBC about it.
Okay.
I have not read it yet. Well, we can pick it up next week on.
Yeah, let's hold that for next week.
Can I do have a little tidbit on the knights fighting dragons thing. Mm-hmm. So you've probably all heard, like, why do they have the stories about the knights fighting dragons? And Kristian already said the thing, representation of Satan, but there's also the fact that people found dinosaur bones long before the 19th and 20th centuries, and you had to have a fucking explanation for it, and it's got to be a mythological explanation because there's nothing existing currently. If you guys saw the new version of Time Bandits, there is a scene where they end up in medieval times with a king or a baron or something like that that's trying to, like, say, oh yeah, I killed this fucking dragon, and he's got kind of like a piece of a dinosaur, and like most of it's just made up of other large animal bones, something like that. And of course, the Time Bandits come in dragging a fucking skull of a dinosaur, like a T-Rex skull, and like, no, we defeated this. And like, it becomes like this whole hilarious scene, and then they end up being able to escape by essentially saying that he's the one that defeated it, and he gives him the T-Rex skull, then mounts on top of his skeleton that he's already built, and it's this whole thing. But it's like, you know what, I wonder how much of like this kind of shit has got to have been like where some of these stories came from. Like, people have obviously vivid imaginations, but you're a peasant and tilling a field, and somewhere in France in the 12th century you stumble across a bone that's 9 feet tall. What the fuck are you gonna think?
that or Nephilim. That's the one that I grew up with. Is that that mostly for the religious side, they thought that the first dinosaur bones were actually just the angelic race of Nephilim that existed in biblical times, and that they were finding those, and there were a lot of Christian organizations that went out to find these bones before they actually discovered they were dinosaur fossils, and were trying to prove that they were Nephilim, and along those lines, which I think would be kind of cool.
Lots of good stories from the past. Yeah, the Catoblepas, real quick, I was finding earliest artwork of it is from about the 14th century. And it almost looks like a dragon, at least in the thing I found.
Oh yeah,
But there were a few of them from like the 14th century, another one from 1450 or so. So there's been pictures of this thing for quite a while, and none of them even remotely look like what's in the DM's guide.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at right now at an article called "The Secret History of the Catoblepas."
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So that's just wonderful. Like, I absolutely love looking through like scanned copies of medieval texts that have been illuminated by 13th century scribes and stuff like that, because they've been tasked to draw things that they've only just seen a description of. Typically translate it probably twice from Greek to Latin and then to English, or even it's still in Latin. So like some of the shit that they end up drawing, it's like, hey, draw a lion having never seen a lion before.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a big cat.
and it's before they had figured out proper art techniques.
Yeah. I mean,
it was just any given guy what he could do with art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just, if you read about like how Pliny the Elder researched his stuff, some of it was, he was probably deployed in places as part of his duties, but part of it was his nephew reached that he was just reading the older accounts of Greek authors, and so he just based his things off of what somebody else wrote, just blatantly assuming
Roman Empire
was true. Yeah. Just like, oh, okay, well, this guy before me wrote that this thing was thing, so it must be true, and that guy based his account off of an older writer than him, and like it's just a giant literary game of telephone.
And this is before telephone existed, so they couldn't define it.
Yeah. Well, it just everyone assumes that the person before them, whatever they wrote, that was a true account, and it must be true, and so they would base their stuff, and they would make further observations or further musings or thoughts about what that could be or how things would work, and it was just this long chain of like, no one really checked anything. They just went, oh yeah, my boy Herodotus wrote about this, and he knew what was up. So
Yeah,
I'm
never,
going to add
never
my
mind
thoughts
that I
on
never
it.
met him or he's been dead for 400
Yeah,
years.
Yeah, I've never read him. He's been dead for a long time, but he wrote this down, so it must be true. And I'm going to tell you what I think about that.
And
then
change
the next
management
guy will-
wasn't a thing, so
yeah.
yeah, it is pretty crazy, and it is very fun looking back and trying to figure out what people were like trying to base things off of. You can get lost in so many different rabbit holes.
You sure can.
Uh,
A weird D&D podcast.
well, yeah.
Speaking of rabbit holes, so I pulled up the Forgotten Realms Wikipedia on Earth a while
Oh,
back, a
God.
couple of weeks ago, since Dan, I think it was Dan that had brought up the
He sure
whole
did.
people who got kidnapped from Earth to go work
Oh, boy.
by the Mulhorandi, like the Mulhorand Empire.
The Imascari, which were
Yep, the
related to
Mascari.
Mulhorandi.
Sorry.
The Mulhorandi people came from Egyptians kidnapped from Earth through
Okay.
portals, and then they implored their gods, the literal Egyptian gods of our mythology,
And so I had
come
to
save them.
I had to go down a fucking rabbit hole on this thing to I had never I understood that obviously Mulhorand and the desert area, it was obviously based off of Egyptian culture. I knew that since I was 15 years old or whatever. But I had never really looked too deeply into it. And then finding out that they literally just kidnapped people from Earth, I'm like, okay, what the fuck was Greenwood smoking when he wrote
I mean,
this?
you know what he was smoking.
I didn't even believe that it was true initially when Dan linked that. I went down the rabbit hole just to find out.
Yeah, you
what
made the assumption
book.
that no, this couldn't have been Greenwood. This had to have been some third-party hack. It
I
was
had to
not.
find out what book it came from, and I don't at this point I don't remember what book it was, but it was a legitimate thing. It was in one of the books. It might not necessarily have been him because it wasn't an early book where that specifically was written, but a lot of the other stuff that has happened on Earth came straight from Greenwood. Yeah, like if you go dive, and I knew some of this from back in the day, I just didn't think about it. If you go diving at old Dragon magazines, there's plenty of times where Elminster meets Ed of the Greenwood. And,
Jesus Christ! Yeah, that is painful to read. Fucking painful.
They write articles all over the place.
Elminster meeting Ed of the Greenwood and also Jeff of the Grub. I mean, come on, it's so bad.
There's an old series of articles in Dragon Magazine called The Wizards 3, where Elminster and
Dalamar the Dark and
Mordenkainen meet and talk about things, and Elminster hides Ed Greenwood, the author of the articles, in like a suit of armor or some other random place in wherever they're meeting, so that he can write down stuff about their meetings. It's just like, oh.
Yeah, Ed Greenwood was basically Elminster's scribe to bring all these things to the people of Earth.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Because they mentioned in some of those articles, like Elminster brings some weird Earth snack to the meeting for them, and there's like, oh yes, this is my thing from Earth.
Oh, it goes in the Wikipedia, like the Forgotten Realms wiki on Earth. It goes into all the details of what Elminster's favorite foods from Earth were. He visited Lake of Geneva a few times, like all sorts of just crazy, nutty stuff.
And the thing is,
Greenwood, Greenwood and Gygax, just
peas in a pod.
Yeah. I mean, it's no wonder it became the Forgotten Realms became the primary campaign setting. Gygax and Greyhawk.
To quote the Wikipedia, at some point, Elminster went on to give game designer Chris Perkins a guided tour of the city of Waterdeep.
God damn it!
Yeah, that is from 2019. Chris Perkins in Waterdeep, apparently.
Oh no!
So to go a little bit further on this, I was actually watching one of the videos that they put out, and Chris Perkins was talking about the Unity Hunt for the Lost Horn, the 50th anniversary adventure that I ran a few and they gave a little bit of backstory to Nico, who is one of the heroes that joined the adventurers from the 80s cartoon series. And I thought they kind of retconned her in to kind of be with the group, but that's actually not what happened. According to Perkins, there are many lost kids who become adventurers in the Forgotten Realms. And Nico is just an example of one of them that basically got lost in the Forgotten Realms and are from Earth. And he mentioned that may be a story direction they're going to take in mass for the upcoming 5R series of books and stories and whatnot.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go that route.
I kind of hope they don't, because like I don't mind the D&D kids. Like I'm perfectly fine with them. I like the fact that they're there. You know, I don't mind this old stuff either, because you know it exists there. I just don't want. I don't want more people from Earth in my D&D. Like I really don't. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. I don't either. I have my appreciation for the nostalgia that is the old D&D cartoon, as kind of as a cheesy and corny and hokey as it was. It's still like part of my childhood, right? And so I have the nostalgia factor for me because I'm of an age to remember it. And so I don't mind seeing them show up and stuff and go, okay, cool. The D&D cartoon kids are grown up and they're here, and they, you know, it makes sense for the 50th anniversary to go back and find things from the past and bring it in to, you know, update it and show, you know, what's happening now. I was fine with all that. But yeah, I agree. I do not want it to be a regular thing. I don't want there to be portals to Earth, and I want them to be like weird where they give you Earth background options and mechanical things from that in books. Like, I don't want to see any of that.
I mean, how else are you going to get M60s into D&D?
No, you joke.
I joke, but we all know that it's likely to. I mean, it's already happened. Let's be honest.
I mean, there's laser guns and power armor in
right. So
what the hell is that module?
Yeah, like I'm with you guys. I hope they don't go down that route, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, when it comes to the D&D kids, that was another rabbit hole I went down after looking into Earth. It's the history, the storyline of the kids is all over the fucking place. Like, we have what happened in the D&D cartoons, but they've been written about in other stuff many times since then. And timelines a lot of times don't match up. Like they were initially.
I mean, Gygax was on so much cocaine when he was
yeah,
with that fucking cartoon, man. Like, it's no wonder it's some of his worst goddamn writing.
Yeah,
I mean, he was out there, he was away from his family, and just like, you know, had the TSR house out there. It's
out there in Hollywood where he was trying to like
where he was trying to join the likes of
the
Game of Thrones offer. We talked about him earlier with the Githyanki. We haven't.
Oh yeah. Apparently, George R. Martin was the one that came up the name for Githyanki.
Yeah,
he just coined it. He just coined the phrase and
in a throwaway line.
Yeah,
it's something he wrote back in the 70s, apparently.
Yeah,
that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah,
I mean he was pretty.
He was
writer of science fiction back then, way before Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah. So I was hanging out with my brother a few months back or whatever, and he was watching an old episode of Tales from the Dark Side. Do you remember that show?
I sure do.
Yeah, it's like Creep Show. But like I'm watching the episode with him, and as they're scrolling through the names, one of the writers on it was fucking George Martin. Like, so I was like, oh, all right. Well, apparently
he was a screenwriter for a lot of TV shows.
Yeah, I had no clue about any of that, but even in the 80s, like mid 80s, he was writing in Hollywood. So
yeah, a lot of people forget about that. They think that because they discovered him as the Game of Thrones author, and so they're like, why is he doing all this Hollywood stuff? I'm like, he's been doing that for decades, man. That's like part of his income.
Yeah, that's actually where most of his income came from before his
books. Like, he was doing that before he made it big as
before
an
HBO
author.
money.
Yeah. Or even before his big books. Like, he made money off the Game of Thrones series, but before that, like before those blew up, like, yeah, he was a screenwriter. That was his primary.
I mean, he wrote the Hitchhiker TV series, 7 episodes of The Twilight Zone, a Beauty and the Beast TV series. Apparently, this is all in the 80s.
I remember that one.
I remember Limits,
No.
Night Flyers.
Or
Yeah,
maybe.
that was Ron Perlman with
As the
Beauty and
Beast?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the Beast.
No shit.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely got paid Hollywood money to do screenwriting. So while doing short stories for in book compilations, like he did done a lot of stuff. People give Barton a lot of shit for not finishing the series,
I
but I
made
mean,
weird tales.
dude's old, and
He made
I can forgive him.
he made $100 million.
I'm not saying that I don't want him to finish the series, but I am saying that I understand where he's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
you-
expect that he will not. I would really like him to finish it. I expect that it will not happen.
You've been
Yeah.
You've been working your ass off forever since the 70s or whatever, and you finally
You
get
strike it big in your 60s.
get a big ass break when you're an old man. I get it, man. I wouldn't want to finish that writing either.
Yep, enjoy the
Yeah,
ride.
and the thing is, like, no matter how he finishes it, no one's gonna be satisfied. No one.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not at this point.
Nope. Especially after fucking the show not finishing the seasons and just ending.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a Game of Thrones podcast, so we can go off on that later. But I will just to redirect us back towards Earth as far as Ed Greenwood's concerned. Oh man, the Forgotten Realms Wikipedia has a huge entry on Earth, and in fact, it's got a great. I have no idea where this art comes from. An incredible image of a demon lord fighting Roman soldiers on Earth.
Oh,
Next
man.
to two Roman foot soldiers face off against Kochki, having likely come through a portal. Kochki being the Prince of Wrath, the demon lord and patron of frost giants and rage.
Yep.
Man, and the wizard Elminster Elmar claimed that there existed hidden portals not only between Earth and Toro, but to the planets Kryn and Oerth. That's fine, but to Earth, come on, man, come on.
Yeah. Well, all the different there are different prime material was being connected is fine. I'm good with that. That your portals exist between
absolutely. I mean,
world.
But
Earth is on the other hand,
there
there were the old modules like your second edition things where they had those like tomes of there was the Glory of Rome tome, and
if you want to play D&D in like historical Earth, that's fucking great.
Play D&D however you and
in
your
the
people want to
historical
play.
Earth. The part that bugs me is just that it's somewhat canon that Elminster visits Ed of the Greenwood's cottage.
Yeah.
And visits Lake Geneva. I mean, that's it was the 80s, it was the 90s. I guess it's fine, but
a writer inserting themselves into their own world always bothers me, no matter how much
it feels wrong.
How much I enjoy the work. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, and when he wrote himself into it, I was annoyed. As much as I love that series, I was still annoyed by that.
So have you guys never done that in a D&D game before, or a tabletop game?
Wrote myself
into my game? Absolutely not.
So I used to play in a campaign a long time ago. This is 20 some odd years ago, second edition. I was one of the players, not the guy running it. And everybody at that table was in that game one way or another, usually as a summon off of a magic item. And I don't remember all of the specifics of everybody in the game. I know that somebody had a magic item that could summon me into the game, and I would show up driving a black van and just run over bad guys with it. And as ridiculous as it sounds, the game is one of the most fun fucking games I've ever played in.
Was it D&D?
It was D&D, second edition.
The only time that anything that was sort of, I guess, playing yourself sort of thing was a friend of mine back in high school ran a game called Beyond the Supernatural. Have you guys ever heard about this system?
I have not.
Yeah, it's by the same writers of Palladium and Rifts.
Okay.
But it is near future supernatural stuff, and it's literally just modern day Earth. Something fucking weird happens, and supernatural shit happens. So essentially, we all began as characters. We began as ourselves in high school, and then fucking ghosts and vampires and shit start showing up, and we start having to try to figure out what we're gonna do based on our current level of skill and what we can do as our actual selves, and
Yep.
like if we have a car or not, or have access to a gun, and like that was interesting. It was like a 2 or 3 shot thing, and that was interesting. But it wasn't D&D, and it wasn't me writing myself into D&D and or how I see myself.
Oh
Yeah.
no, and like I said,
Uh,
we didn't write ourselves into that game. It was the DM wrote us into the game as magic items. So it was whatever he saw of us. We would usually show up
Sure.
as a summon. Just think Final Fantasy type summons or whatever. You show up, you beat up some bad guys real quick, and then you're out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take, but going on that, playing D&D, how you want to play that, actually, it kind of segues into the topic I wanted to bring in tonight. Did you guys finish watching Arcane?
I
haven't
have
started
not.
it.
Well,
No.
it's amazing.
Yes,
I'm sure it will be, but don't spoil anything because
I'm not going to spoil anything. All I'm going to do is I found, because everyone's on this big Arcane kick, I wondered if there was any tabletop role-playing games out there for League of Legends Arcane.
I went looking as well and found nothing. So I hope you did find something.
There's
a
did.
D&D collab with League of Legends.
There was. It's called Rune Arcana, and I put a link in our podcast chat. And essentially, it's just D&D at the time, 5th edition, and they've updated for 5R. And it kind of like retools all the classes to work for the League of Legends Arcane setting, and it's actually pretty good. I mean, I did a little bit of surface level looking at it. I mean, I'm not gonna play League of Legends. League of Legends is the most toxic, horrible game out there. But there's a lot of love put into the lore, and that show definitely showed that there are a lot of really good characters and a lot of really good ideas out there for people to mess with.
It really showed that how much you can get out of a game when you spend, or a show when you spend $250 million on it.
Okay, this is definitely not the thing the collab I was talking. There was an official like D&D meets League of Legends thing.
Okay.
Released on D&D Beyond and online as a PDF you could download, and it had a few like subclasses and stuff all based on different kind of League of Legends characters.
But my link is definitely worth a link, worth a look. They definitely put a lot of time and thought into how things work, bringing in some of the magic items from the game and getting everything to sync up well. So it's worth a look. I definitely watch the show for sure, but
it's one of those things. I love the show. I know literal nothing about the game, so I would never actually be able to run or consider running a D&D version of it. But the amount of lore that's in that show and just the way it runs, it's been fucking fantastic. I've watched all the first season and the first couple episodes from the second season.
Yeah, I've seen the first season, haven't started on the second season yet.
Their Wikipedia is just like Forgotten Realms wiki. There's enough there that you can just
there's a lot of people that love it, and there's the big community that I'm sure is not toxic, but I've heard horror stories of the toxicity of the actually playing the game.
Oh, I've played I've played
I'm
it like
not interested at all.
I played 3 or 4 games and I could smell it.
I played a few games and I experienced it because even as a new person going into the game, like making it clear that I was new, it was just people yelling,
"Get the fuck out of here!"
Yeah,
the worst, like just whatever phobic, like profanity you could yell at people. That was what people were yelling in voice and in the chat. It was awful.
It's just so weird. Just like it's so odd that game could just have that, and then still like have such an amazing creative team behind it.
My assumption is that's toned down some since then. Like it's been
no, it is not at all.
Despite all their efforts to combat it, people will tell you that it is the worst community to play in. Like every game, it is a rare occurrence that you can play a game without somebody like screaming at you, screaming obscenities at you.
I mean, that's no different than just playing Overwatch with Chris.
Well, that's him doing it, and we always yell at him for it. but them just it is not a good experience.
All right, now let's move on.
Yes.
So,
Please.
Christian, are you ready to talk about you had an ecology?
The ecology of the Gorbel.
Yeah,
I've been
let's do
ready.
this. All right, let's do this.
The Gorbel is a fantastic monster. The Gorbel is a creature some consider to be akin to a beholder. It is a round orb. It has a crown of 6 eye stalks on eyes around it, but it has no central eye. It has a mouth full of tiny teeth and 2 clawed arms/legs. No one's not really sure. It floats around. And it has a rubbery hide. It is actually immune to all bludgeoning damage.
Oh no!
But if you hit it with a slashing or piercing weapon, it hurts it. But because the creature is essentially like a weird gelatinous bag of gas, and the gas that it's filled with is explosive on contact with air. So every time you hit it, it explodes a little bit. And then when you kill it, it detonates.
Oh,
Fantastic.
and I see that it's only in first and second edition.
Yes.
There's got to be a 5e version of it out there
Oh,
somewhere.
I'm sure somebody's made
Yeah.
one.
And then
Right.
when its claws were combined to say that despite the fact that its arms are boneless and look weak, they're actually very strong once they latch on. The claws stay latched in until either you die or it dies.
In which it explodes and
Which
nearly kills you.
Yeah.
All right, but how does it poop?
Well,
When it dies, all the
Yeah,
gas
when it
that
dies,
comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just building up that gas, man.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm on the wiki.
Its mouth is the only opening in its body.
Yeah, I'm on the wiki, and just the picture, the first edition picture and the second edition picture are just wonderful.
Oh, look at the gallery at the bottom.
so-
There's a brownie
just
fighting it and a sprite fighting a Gorbel.
Just because you will love this, Wables, you will know that because its mouth is the only opening in its body, it's also how it eats and breathes, but also plays a part in its reproduction.
Okay.
They're hermaphroditic and they produce eggs within their hollow body cavity, and these eggs are fertilized only upon their explosive death of another Gorbel.
Oh man, if these things implanted other creatures
So
upon
they have
death,
to be near each other when they explode, and that fertilizes the other ones near it.
Sweet Jesus. So on the wiki, the places they could be located between 1357 and 1368 DR, Gorbels could occasionally be found in the sewers beneath Waterdeep. Habitats. Besides their presence within the sewers of Waterdeep, Gorbels were also known to be encountered among the tiers of Salune, which is the fucking asteroid belt.
yeah, I was gonna say that's like
Yep.
out in space.
Yeah. So either in the sewers of Waterdeep or when you're spell jamming.
You know, if I didn't just end my Waterdeep campaign yesterday, I'd have these guys in there.
Oh man.
They'll find a way next time you run it.
Yeah, and because Gorbels were famously not immune to the explosive deaths of other Gorbels, you could cause a chain reaction of Gorbel explosions.
Oh man, I actually had one of those happen at Ice
You
Method
did- you
Central
did
in,
with Method.
in the Frost Maiden. Like all of the melee characters just kind of got up in there and knocked one down, and then that one exploded. And it's piercing damage, not cold damage. So it was boom, next one goes down, next one goes down, and they just all exploded on everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, so they instinctively look to attack you from behind, in which case they would lock their claws onto you, and they could literally just lock their claws into position so they were fixed and would not move, and so they just stayed on top of you. And in older editions, that would reduce your armor class so that other Gorbels could attempt to swarm you because they
It's like-
traveled in small swarms.
It's like the tribbles. Yeah.
No, what this reminds me of, and did we? I guess if they're in first edition, this came out well before Dragon Ball happened. But this reminds me of the Cybermen from Dragon Ball Z.
Maybe.
They were small plant-like creatures that basically, did karate and ki attacks and whatnot. But they had little hands and claws that could latch onto you and they couldn't break them locking their claws on you, and then they would explode. So it's a very similar theme, and definitely they didn't crossbreed with thoughts because like we're talking like an ocean's distance before internet. So it's very interesting how like the same ideas can permeate different like artists' thoughts and whatnot.
Yeah, that's always been a thing.
Yeah, so they floated around on this light of air gas. They could kind of telekinesis themselves in directions they wanted to go when they wanted to, but otherwise they could just kind of float wherever the wind would take them.
Yeah.
And they're a weird, explodey little thing.
Yeah, Waterdeep needs to be careful, man. So you kill one, next thing you know, that starts spawning a whole bunch more of these things. Next thing you know, Waterdeep goes up in a ball of gassy flame.
See, that's a module I could write and publish, and people would like. Invasion of the Gorbels.
Yeah.
Also, part of their interesting is because their skin is so sensitive to air pressure and movements, is that even if you blind all of their eyes and deafen them, they can still sense any creatures within 50 feet of them just by air.
So they have blind sight.
Yeah, effectively.
That is amazing.
So yeah, that's just a weird random creature that only occurred in old editions and seems to have been forgotten about, but I found fun just because of the like ridiculous art and the fact that they're just like floating gas bag false beholders.
We're bringing it back.
I mean, there are other false beholders that are giant gas bombs that explode.
Yeah, there are gas spores, but these were a different kind of one because they were actually kind of alive.
Plus, somebody wrote an ecology on them, so you actually know how they breed.
Yeah, and that's the important part.
And sometimes they mentioned that sometimes they would overeat, which would like force them to land and only walk. So if they eat too much, they can no longer float and they have to walk around on their two legs.
So it reduces their movement.
Yeah, but in an emergency, they can forcibly regurgitate.
Oh my goodness.
Which would exclude both some of their explosive gas and a vitriolic acid at people if they did it in an emergency in order to be able to float again.
I've been wanting that power my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to be able to just spit up acid and gas at other people?
If you can harvest their eyes, but you have to do it somehow before they explode.
Oh man.
That you could use it as a substitute material component for the wizard eye spell.
I see. I would have thought levitate. All right.
Yeah, why do we play this game sometimes, guys?
So we can entertain ourselves by reading about Elminster going to visit Ed of the Greenwood on Earth and learn about Gorbels.
But that is the Gorbel, the false beholder.
Excellent ecology choice. I'll have to find something to try to top that next week. I don't know if I can.
I don't think you can either, man. I challenge you to.
Yeah, that'll be a struggle.
Accepted.
All right, guys. I think that's enough for this week.
All right.
We'll finish up the DM's guide. There's not much left.
No, there's really nothing. Just a DM screen, honestly. And that's all
lore glossary and
lore glossary. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Another year Grumpy Dungeon Master stuff happening. Yeah.
Watch out for the Turkey Hydra.
Yeah. And the false Hydra that are your parents when you get home.
Gobble, gobble.